Hey, Brenda, good to connect with you again. And,
Hello.
and welcome everyone to Encouraging Conversations, where we're just talking about everyday things and just digging in a little deeper. So, I'm Judy Cruz here in Holland, Michigan. I am many things. A lot of people know me as an artist, but I'm also involved in some business things and entrepreneurial coach. But Brenda here is good, doing exciting things and has a great thing in store. Why don't you share a little bit, Brenda?
Well, I'm in the air show industry, kind of really in between what you'd call full-time employment. But one of my homes in the air show world was the Dayton Air Show. And I'm going to be leaving in about a week to help them in the final 2 weeks as they produce their events. So I'm looking forward to seeing all my great Ohio friends from that show down there and to really see my first air show since October of 2019 in live. So that will be wonderful.
Good, good. It's exciting to get back into things again.
Yes.
Yeah. And this week we're going to get back into discussion on things about trying to walk out our unique life in this world. I um, I had something new I learned. I'm definitely open to learning, and sometimes because I don't watch TV and get involved in all of these things. My new thing I learned this year was FOMO, fear of missing out, and I'm like, okay, I didn't know it had its own words. So I thought of that so much. People in life, fear of missing out, they try and conform to the crowd or join with peer pressure or just engage with things that aren't really what they want to be in, just so they aren't missing. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, I again working in an industry that has a lot of young people has helped me kind of keep up on all of these
Good
little
for
sayings
you.
or acronyms or whatever. Too. So that's been my training ground. And I look at it both ways, and most of the time, I think people refer to that when they hear of something that someone's going to do that's really sounds neat and engaging, and they know that their schedule or whatever won't permit them to do it. Not that that would be a bad thing if they could. And I think sometimes we are wired, and we talked about this a little bit last week, and I sometimes am guilty that it's like I'd like to do everything, but then you begin to realize that my bandwidth and soon my physical body and everything else could not really handle that well. And maybe we also mentioned I find myself having to go back to God and say, what do you have for me? And He's the best calendar manager for me in that regard.
Oh, okay, these are the things on my maybe list. What's priorities, right?
Right.
I
And
have that with things too. And there's always more opportunities for us, but are they the right ones?
right. At
And
this time, too. Doesn't mean never, but it's
I
sometimes
agree
hard
with
to
you
look.
there very much.
Hmm.
Because one of my goals, I had left the gallery I helped manage last fall and planned on a new one this year. And things just haven't come together for me to do that. And I'm not feeling, it's nice. I'm not feeling pressure that I have to. And I've actually already sold more art outside of the gallery than last year, during everything shut down. So that's kind of nice too.
Interesting.
So I think we don't realize how many times that God can bring things in different ways. We don't always have to do the running for it.
Right. And it always turns out better than we thought or imagined.
Yeah. I think that FOMO, a lot of that comes too with just urgency messages. I mean, I think our marketing world is really the urgency thing that, even sales or something, it's do it now, it's going to expire. And
Yes.
if you don't, you're going to miss it. And well, there's always another time, whether it's right there or something else.
I agree. I think our smartphones are wonderful tools and assistants, but I found myself too being too glued to all the notification, dings and whatevers, and they all at first seemed to be so important, and then I began to realize, are they really? And how quickly you can get off track of what you should be doing just by scrolling through all of this. And so I've really tried to be more self-disciplined to turn off notifications and move away, from being glued to that screen.
Yeah.
And I think that's a whole, the generation below us and even below them. It is there are kids that sleep with their phones at night, that don't get a good night's sleep and all of that. And it's a very different world out there, in trying to tame those great assistants that we have with them to really match a healthy lifestyle. It's a challenge.
Yeah. I I did. I spent a lot of time away from the computer yesterday, and someone asked me something. I'm like, I have to wait for my computer to boot back up. And I didn't do that till first time that day was at 5 p.m. on Saturday. So I'm like, well, this is slow. I'm sorry. But I felt fine with it. Being out in the yard and working in the garden was nice. We did talk about that and our encouraging conversation with Mandy, who is in her 20s. And she was talking too that, she'd rather sit and have a real conversation with people. So she found it's not always the best tool for communication either, because things can be taken wrong.
Right. Yes, I think, and we know that even like an email, the tone of things does not come across well, and especially if you're in a shortened version like texting or Twitter and all these other issues where it's really brief, and then you do see people abbreviating different things, or you interpret it differently, and I think can be fraught with misinterpretation.
Or typos.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
So don't be offended. I'm not trying to offend anyone,
No.
but I do have typos.
Yeah,
I have said the
exactly.
wrong thing inappropriately, and it wasn't even the word
Intentional.
I,
Yeah.
no,
Oh.
like, oh gosh.
Hmm.
So my mom uses the voice to text a lot. And when I do, I'm a little more precise in my words and enunciation. And she's just, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, Mom, that didn't really work. What are you trying to say? So it made me think too, though, how often are we saying things that, really are putting, because we're going to talk about labels with Crystal. Um, how often are we just kind of bringing up things or putting labels on others, and we're not even realizing it? Like, you stupid cat. No, I don't usually say that. But I do. I have one who's sick and she's getting better, but I'm trying not to say the words and, declaring sickness over her, instead of trying to
Mhm.
speak health over her little body.
Correct.
So I'm not like going gain weight, you skinny thing, but
Yeah. It's hard. It is difficult, especially when it's people that are close to you.
yeah.
And you talk about it kind in this, I just struck me. I back way in my elementary days. One of the activities that I really wanted to get involved in was gymnastics, and um, at the time, I would have been on the taller end in my class. I was not built in any way, shape, or form of what we think of a traditional gymnast, especially, now that the Olympics are a few weeks away. They're, 4 foot something, very tight, muscular, tiny girls. And I would never have been considered a tiny girl.
Yeah.
And did this for most of elementary. We're about to move into middle school, and so it was getting more, kind of competitive or whatever. And I think my mother, she thought in a good way, was trying to say, I don't know if this is really where you want to put your energy. You're not really built like a gymnast. You're in
Mhm.
her eyes, you don't look like a gymnast. And so that label for her, and I thought, oh, that's it. I guess I never considered it until you heard someone else reflect that back to you. But it did make me, I actually did start looking, then tennis actually became my new game, and I did fine in that too. But I tease her kind of lovingly now. I'm like, oh man, I could have been an Olympian, mom, but you thought I did. Not really. Yeah. By
Some,
that point, I was way beyond, those girls are starting, in early elementary now.
yeah.
But that same thing, that and a person who loves you that even could maybe put a label on you that they might not have intended the outcome
Yeah.
to happen.
I mean, I had that. I was like you. I was actually, everyone else is like this tall in grade school, and there's Judy.
Yeah.
So, um, and yeah, I did okay in some sports, but like in basketball team, I couldn't jump, but they put me as center and all
Oh,
kinds of stuff. Um, and because I was larger, yeah, I did great at what's that, dodgeball
oh, yeah.
or not volleyball. That was
Tetherball.
tetherball. Yes.
Yeah. Love that game too. I loved it.
Maybe that's why I have shoulder issues.
You were a
But
champion at tetherball.
But I did when I started doing art. I had so many people talk and say, "Oh, you're going to be a starving artist. You're going to be a starving artist." That I'm like, "Be quiet, please."
Mm.
I know the power of words, which is, oh gosh, I'd love to write a book on that. But I know other people have used that phrase for projects, and it
Right.
is, our words are potent.
They truly are. In that, James, isn't the verse about your tongue and
Yeah.
how
Death and
powerful it
life.
is?
Death and
Mm,
life. That's actually a proverb, I think.
mm,
Death and life in the power of the tongue. And those who love it will eat its fruit.
right.
So I took years ago a short workshop or something on, oh, how was it? It was going against not speaking negatively. Oh, there. Okay. So it was negativity fast. That's how they termed it.
Oh.
Yeah. So recognizing the times when you're speaking negatively, whether even it's over yourself, dummy, you should have done it this way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily over other people.
Right.
Sometimes we're beating ourselves up with blame and shame when we really don't need to. So that
Exactly.
impacted so much that I really started watching words. And yes, I still notice when they come out, and
I hear you.
try to
Yes.
try to keep it not, but we're all a work in progress.
We certainly are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Transforming, right? Every day, hopefully.
Yeah. I just found something. I was in it was kind of a art and connection, and taking your favorite verse and then doing a little painting of it. And why is it that verse speaks to you so much? And to me, I love Romans 12 too. Um, which that's part of our conversation right here. Do
Hmm.
not conform to the ways of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I was just, it was like, as I reread that today, because it was from something a few months ago, and I'm like, yeah, so long I conformed to others, to the world, to try and fit in, to, or try and be in the in group, or what new thing is happening, or some people do that, just so they have good conversation, they're involved in everything. But I wasn't, I was ignoring me.
Mm.
I lost some of me doing that.
Yes, and I know it's very tough, especially I would say in the school age, the K through 12, or maybe the middle school girl. I'm thinking of middle school girls. That's probably one of the hardest chapters in life. I think
Yeah.
girls are dealing with beauty and what does the world say is beautiful and who am I? And um, it can be really, and I think I'm just reflecting on my own passage during that time. And like you said, um, the angst of wanting to fit in, and yet when you're trying to do that, knowing that's not really, who I am, and so therefore you really don't have a peace or joy, very much. You're more on pins and needles of doing the right thing, saying the right thing, looking the right way, etc. And um, the quicker that you can realize that and break that off, I think the better. But some people have a very difficult time in those types of years, and really on beyond that, into adulthood. I think people get mixed up into fitting in as well, because we're community people. We do want to be around others.
I do. I had thought too of different ways. Like I know that you remarried, so you had a blended family, and I was
Mhm.
part of that too. Um, and it's hard too within families to even, because if you really think about it, it's a different culture everywhere. I mean,
Exactly.
my real sister's so different from me. My stepsister's so different from the both of us. And her sister is so different. We're all on unique journeys. And yet, sometimes, parenting or others, people try and keep you in the same, you should be just like them or similar.
Mhm.
And you're not, you're unique.
Right. And everybody, we know that, each person has different giftings and looks at the world, differently than we do,
Yeah.
which makes it richer. But for some reason, I think it does unsettle some people, and that conformity looks safer, perhaps.
Or easier.
Hmm.
Easier to manage, or just like, okay, then I don't have to think or imagine what this or my life would be.
Mm,
But I think a lot of people have buried dreams that need to come to life.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't hear people say that often, and um, what dreams have you buried, to think about or even reflect upon that, or especially, and schools I think are changing a little bit, but they seem to want to get kids, and there are some advantage to that, to thinking, what's beyond high school and getting in these certain tracks. And even like what we discussed the last time, I mean, I'm in this ear show world. I've never been to one in
Yeah.
school, not even in college. So how would I even know that, And I think it's just exposure and trying to get even young people as they're moving through, realizing that very rarely, I think, does someone just say, I'm going to be a this, at 17, 18, and never change from there on out. That's not the world we live in anymore, career wise. Way back when I was teaching, talented and gifted, and this would have been in the 90s, they were saying you should get your students ready to think about having 20 different careers. And that was in the 90s. Which even that was a little overwhelming. I'm like, really? I had a hard
That's
time imagining that even at that point.
that's
Um,
surprising because
right.
I I'm I mean, I think in the late 90s I heard people just start talking about how there is more shifts. People won't be at companies for 30 years anymore. That's few and far between. And yet so many, still thought that way.
Hmm.
But now, yeah, nowadays people don't stay at jobs. HR people are really struggling with that.
Right. And I think again, that's that generational. You do see they look at things differently, and they were talking about, what a pension, longevity in a job, that those aren't necessarily appealing to them. Even,
Mhm.
it's their quality of their work world or wherever, however, now we know, people did like staying home, some of them, or having a hybrid of home office versus community office versus commuting.
Yeah.
And I think that we're all trying to catch up with what are people's real dreams now in the world and the work world. That's hard to say quickly.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and keep maintaining, quality personnel. And how do you attract that and keep that? And maybe the new world is that you can't necessarily plan on that. Or
Well,
you should let people grow to change or to move, and that might be moving either out of the company or in a totally different department.
I think that that even is affected by some labels of, we hire you in as this. I mean, the job I'm doing is not something I ever really trained for or expected.
Mm,
Sure, it's has part of its admin roles that you would do in an accounting, administration, product development, but it, I'm like, how did I get here? Oh well, it's working. So,
right.
and it's nice that on the side that I can use my creative skills, because now that they've been released and let out of the closet, I I I can't go without them.
Well,
So
I think and those of us around you are blessed by that too. So I think, like you said, I think those were God-given dreams and talents, and he's showing you ways to weave that into what your life is today,
yeah,
which is
it
pretty
doesn't have to
impressive.
be the whole part of life, but there's
Mhm,
ways to bring it in. I
correct.
do see myself creating a workshop for people, how they can do that in their lives too. So
That's
that's something
wonderful.
I plan in later this year, I hope.
That sounds exciting. I
Yeah.
think would be well received.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We also have, as we talked about, we have Crystal Travis, who wrote this book, Label Breaker: Finding Your Identity in a World of Labels. So I have set up a time to do some recording with her. And that is probably when Brenda is busy at Dayton. So that's something that we have to look forward to. And then we're working on engaging with some others. And we'll just be talking more about ways to encourage others, encourage ourselves, and to just learn how to live a full life again. Because there's so many things we all are capable of doing, and ways that we can help others accomplish more. So, Brenda, how about if you pray us out today, and then we will say goodbye.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
And I'll miss you. It's good that we'll, have technology. I could still watch it later though, when you
Yeah.
talk to Crystal.
Well, I can share the time, and if you're not swamped there, but I know it'll keep you busy.
Yes. All right. Lord, I thank you for technology that allows us to meet people that are not even in the same room, same city, maybe even the same country, that you do gift each one of us with unique talents, that you've woven us together to be here for such a time as this, and to be a body of encouragers, Lord. And I just pray that you continue to bless Judy in this endeavor. I thank you for her giftings and how she's turning them over and using them for your glory. I pray for Crystal too, Lord, as she has just released this book, that conversation about labels will really bless others that hear it, and maybe think about some new ways of how they've thought of themselves, or perhaps others that are close to them. Lord, that you would just draw them to you in a new and a unique way. And all of these things, Lord, we just thank you and say amen.
Amen. Well, Brenda, thanks. It's a treasure, not just a pleasure, a treasure
Oh,
to
I
do some
like
of
that.
this, to do some of this with you. So,
Thank you.
okay, we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.